Breaking news, mass firings have begun at federal agencies, according to employee and union sources. Probationary employees are being fired at the Department of Education and the Small Business Administration. Now, until now, federal employees across the government were just placed on administrative leave. Jamal is back with us at the table. These firings appear to affect people. The Department of Education has been in DOGE's sights. People in the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation Services that supports kids with disabilities and the Federal Student Aid Office. That's at least what we know right now. I also want to read part of what the letter said to these employees. Quote, the agency finds, based on your performance, that you have not demonstrated that your further employment at the agency would be in the public interest. So it's begun.
So most of the 19th century, the civil service was open for patronage, right? It was handled by big city bosses and, politicians of both parties. In 1883, President Chester Arthur made the merit-based system civil service. And that was to get rid of politics in our civil service so we knew we could count on government employees to do the people's business, not the politicians' business. We are not just going back to some previous, thing in the 70s, 1970s, or the 1950s. We're going all the way back to the 1870s and how the President of the United States wants to govern. So whether he wants to be President McKinley and start annexing like new lands overseas, or he wants to go back to an earlier era where everybody's going to be beholden to the president and not beholden to the people. This is not, I think, what the American public signed up for. They wanted change, and the Democrats want change. All of us, I think, want to have a government that works for us, it's faster, it's more efficient, but we don't want a government that doesn't work for us and works for billionaires and the president of the United States.
Every 4 years, I'm just trying to put my head in the position of this country when Trump is not president, right? Every 4 years, presumptively now, the president's going to come in and the entire civil service of the government is going to change out, and all the things that you relied on the government to do, now you have no idea whether the government's going to do it or not because of the whims of the president. I think that is also something that we have to take seriously as a possibility here.
Well, the whims, as you call them, are embedded in the Constitution of the United States. The president's the head of the executive branch. He ought to be able to decide how to operate the executive branch and who works at the executive branch. And you say that the government shouldn't answer to the president should answer to the people. Well, how do the people?
They should be responsible.
How do the people choose how to govern themselves? By electing a president. And so, look, these are probationary employees. I don't know how many it is, but all I know is this: government only ever seems to get bigger and never really seems to get smaller. He promised to make it smaller, and now they're making it smaller. To me, the political upside here is quite obvious.
And I think this goes hand in hand with the buyouts that were offered that the judge then put a freeze on, right? And so if they can't...
just to be clear, that freeze has now been lifted by the judge because the
case
it's
going to be appealed.
Going on.
So if it's, if they can't do it through the buyouts, then they're going to fire people. And who can they fire? They can fire the people who don't yet have union protection because they are probationary, as Scott just said.
Meaning they were more recently hired.
Yeah, which means I don't understand how they can be sending an email saying your performance has proven not to be up to par when they were just recently hired.
It seems like a bit
very
of a,
arbitrary.
It seems like a bit of a, they're trying to, it's kind of CYA, like you have to put that in there to justify firing someone, even though the firing is really more about Scott's point than it is actually about this person's performance, which we will probably end up seeing in court at some point.
I want to go back to Jamal's point and respectfully disagree. You said, I don't think this is what the American people signed up for, but I think it's exactly what we signed up for. I don't know if any president in history spent this much time on holding accountability and efficiency to his own government. So the Department of Education has a $70 billion budget annually, yet we haven't seen any progress in the educational system over the last 4 years. We're ranked 13 in the world. We're like 24th in science, 18th in math. We're really not doing well on a global stage in terms of our education system performance. So I think evaluating, where is the $70 billion going? Where are we failing? And how do we make this better? I don't know if blind firings for probational employees is the right thing to do, but I think definitely investigating through DOGE why we are failing so badly in the DOE is absolutely the right move to do.
In every government office I've ever seen, you can walk through the door, you can ask anybody, who around here is not doing their job? They'll tell you. People will tell you who's not doing their job. You can get rid of those people. I don't know if anybody would complain, but it's the mass firings that says something else is afoot. It's not just what they're calling it.
Agreed.
I think
there is something else afoot.
Yeah, I think that going off of what you were saying, Emily, with the budget, I think more than half of the budget goes to grants and loans for low-income students, for them to be able to attend college, things like that. And so, but I do agree with your point that we need to be doing more on education. And so there needs to be some sort of reform. And I think that this has been something that conservatives have long wanted, is shrinking the Department of Education. So I support all of that in that regard. But where I have the issue is these firings, and what is the reasoning for them? Are these people being laid off because maybe they're anti-Trump and posted things on social media? Like, what is these people deserve a little bit more of an explanation then.
No, there's no
just
mystery.
A vague email.
There's no mystery, and let me offer them an explanation. This administration would like to make the federal government smaller. We would like to spend less on payroll. You just got here, therefore you won't be working here anymore. It's pretty simple, and they shouldn't take it personally. But these guys got elected to shrink the government, and that's what they intend to do.
Scott, there has been like cold emails going to government workers even before Trump took office, in those 2 months between the transition, wanting people to snitch on each other, wanting colleagues to snitch on each other. Who supported Biden? Who did this? Who did that? There's websites targeting people who are government, not political appointees, civil servants. And I would tell you that I'm not sure everybody knew what they were signing up for. I remember reading the case of a VA worker who was moving to Washington because they just gotten a new employment, right? And now now it's frozen. And guess what? They voted for Trump, but they've sold their house, they've sold their car, they are ready to move to Washington, D.C. to be a VA worker, and now they're out of jobs. And so that's going to happen to Republicans, Democrats, and everybody in between.